Welcome to another episode of Not for the Weak Minded. Now I'm just going to show you a few things that should make you question everything. A few of the things I'm going to show you, you've already seen if you've been watching my content. However, if you've not seen much of my content, then please bear this information in mind. Now this is from a book called the Flat Earth Trilogy Book of Secrets 2. Excuse me. So I'm just going to read this paragraph. The sun and moon are the same size and close. When you observe the sun and moon, you see two equally sized, equidistant circles tracing similar paths at similar speeds around a flat, stationary Earth. The experts at NASA, however, claim your common sense, everyday experience is false on all accounts. So essentially, they say to you, you shouldn't trust your eyes, you should trust the CGI lies. And false principles. Now I'm going to explain why everything is based on a lie shortly. And that has to do with the Big Bang Theory, that has to do with other things, which I'm not going to explain in this video, but geological time being a lie for one. So to begin with, they say the Earth is not flat, but a big ball, not stationary but spinning around 19 miles per second. They say the sun does not revolve around the Earth as it appears, but the Earth revolves around the sun. The moon on the other hand does not revolve around the Earth, though not east to west as it appears, rather west to east. And the sun is actually 400 times larger than the moon and 400 times further away. You can clearly see they are the same size and distance. You can see the Earth is flat, i.e. NASA's equations for the curvature of the Earth have been taken by numerous people, right, and tested. And it's been proven, undoubtedly, that there is no curvature whatsoever in terms of using their calculations. This is why people say the Earth is flat. Now, I know many of you get the idea when this information is presented that you expect a flat disc floating in a void, right, in space. You have to completely start again with your interpretation of everything from the beginning. And to do that, you'd have to literally chuck what you've been told away. And unfortunately, many of you don't do that. Many of you just ridicule the flat earthers. When in reality, our eyes prove that they've lied, and so does people's measurements of the Earth. So the flattest places on the Earth have been measured. You know, some of the deserts are miles and miles and miles long in either direction with no curvature measured. So you can clearly see they are the same size and distance. You can see the Earth is flat. You can feel the Earth is stationary. But according to the gospel of modern astronomy, you are wrong and a simpleton worthy of endless ridicule if you dare to trust your own eyes and experience. Heliocentrists, astronomical figures, always sound perfectly precise, but they have historically been notorious for irregular and drastically changing them to suit their various models. Exactly. They've been proven a lie, and they just carry on regardless. They just keep adding stuff to it to make it sound legit. And that's exactly what they've been doing. Ad hoc this knowledge when it's been... And unfortunately, you need to go backwards to see that, first of all experiments to prove the Earth moving proved that stationary were seen as failures, right? For example, and there are other answers, yeah? For example, gravity is not what you've been told. It's part of the magnetic electric spectrum, and that is something that you need to get into your minds, that everything relates to frequencies because this is a frequency-based reality. For instance, in this time, Copernicus calculated the sun's distance from the Earth to be 3,391,200 miles. The next century, Johannes Kepler decided it was actually 12 1,376,800 miles away. Isaac Newton once said, "It matters not whether we reckon it's 28 or 54 million miles distance, for either would do just as well." Right? How scientific. They couldn't care less. These Freemasons, they just wanted to deceive us, and they have massively, through the power of suggestion and the corruption of the education system. Benjamin Martin calculated between 81 and 82 million miles away. Thomas Dilworth claimed 93,726,900 miles. John Hines stated positively 95,298,260 miles. Benjamin Gold said that more than 96 million miles, and Christian Meyer thought it was more than 104 million. All bait or nonsense. Flat earthers throughout the ages, conversely, have used sextants and plain trigonometry to make such calculations, and found the sun and moon both to be only about 32 miles in diameter and less than a few thousand miles from the earth. Now, there is a documentary called, some of you have probably heard of it, some of you ain't. If you haven't heard of it, I recommend watching it, Journey to the Center of the Universe, or The Principle. And in that, it tells you that both of these models, right, can work, so to speak, but it depends on your perception, right? So amateur balloon footage taken above the clouds has provided stunning visual proof that the sun cannot be millions of miles away. In several shots, you can see a clear, hot spot reflecting on the clouds directly below the sun's spotlight, like influence. If the sun were actually millions of miles away, such a small, localized hotspot could not occur. Agreed. Our eyes, through observation, which is actually the definition of science, proves undoubtedly that the sun is local, right? So another proof the sun is not millions of miles away is found by tracing the angle of the sun's rays back to their source above the clouds. There are thousands of pictures showing how sunlight comes down through the cloud cover at a variance of converging angles. The area of the convergence is of course the sun, and is clearly not millions of miles away, but rather relatively close to the earth just above the clouds. The ball earth model claims the sun is precisely 400 times larger than the moon and 400 times further away from the earth, making them falsely appear exactly the same size. Once again, the ball model asks us to accept as coincidence something that cannot be explained other than by natural design. The sun and moon occupy the same amount of space in the sky and have been measured with sextants to be of equal size and equal distance. So claiming otherwise is against our eyes, experience, experiments, and common sense. Now I'm not going to read the rest. If you want to read the book, there it is, the Flat Earth Trilogy book of secrets. Now I just want to get into the people's heads that our observations and ancient astronomical tools, the astrolabe, etc., prove undoubtedly that the sun is not millions of miles away. So what is the sun if it's not a ball of gas and hydrogen? Right? Moving on. We will get into this. So there is things in here actually. I want to get back into this. I'll keep going down. I read it earlier. Here we go. There's a vortex of aether that rotating around the earth moves the sun and moon and the planets. There are also a secondary vertical wind. It is the one constituting the so-called gravity force. Such vortexes, however, do not move the dome. Now, I think they got this wrong. I think the stars are attached to the dome firmament, and the dome rotates using magnets, which creates one of the toroidal fields. The dome moves. Yeah, the dome moves around us. So, and there's other experiments which I'm going to get into, which is this one. So a surprising experiment opens the path to new particle manipulation methods. Right? Researchers at Aalto University have discovered a surprising phenomenon that changes how we think about how sound can move particles. Now, I tried to explain on the last video I did with exposing Simon Dan. Yeah, it's just nothing but uncredible, you know, people, Freemasons, that just use centuries of lies to convince you that there are no other answers. However, I did state that sound is important to understand, and it is a key component in our existence. Without sound, we wouldn't exist. So, what did God say? Let there be light. And that sound, you know, is light, essentially. Sound can create light in water, for example, sonoluminescence. So their experiment is based on a famous experiment recognizable from high school science classrooms worldwide. The Chandidini plate experiment, where particles move on a vibrating surface. The experiment was first performed in 1787 by Ernest, I can't even say that name, Chandidini, who is known as the father of acoustics. Experiments showed that when a plate is vibrating at a frequency, heavy particles move towards the regions with less vibration, called nodal lines. So essentially, there is things to understand. So we know that we've got a magnetic electric field of protection around us, which is going to get into the Van Allen radiation belts in a minute. And not only that, but experiments where rockets have been shot up at the firmament show that rockets stop dead, like it's hitting a force field of some kind. So there is a field of energy that's protecting the dome, essentially, from being broken, or the dome itself is part of moving, right? And it has to involve magnets and sound, in my opinion, to create a magnetic field. But essentially, this is to do with piezoelectric, and eventually, if you take it down further, you get into 0 point energy, etc., and that's to do with free energy. And this is exactly why they don't want you to know the truth, because we can create free energy using sound waves, right? We can create free energy by harnessing water to create sound. This is exactly what they did in the ancient past with the pyramids. All the pyramids around the world have got water flowing underneath them that hit a resonant chamber that then is enhanced through understanding the properties of stones, you know, quartz, for example. So, cosmic confusion, talk of multiverses, and big errors in astrophysics. I would like to talk about a very serious embarrassment, said Mario Livio, a proclaimed scientist and author at a panel of World Science Festival in New York last month. With three other prominent astrophysicists on the panel, Livio delved into one of the most confounding and embarrassing problems in modern astrophysics, which led to a discussion of whether or not our universe might be just one of infinite multi-universes. Get that out of your head. The multiverse is based upon the Big Bang Theory, right? It's bad. It's based on bad science. The embarrassment Vivo referred to is sometimes known as the vacuum catastrophe. Hear that? The vacuum catastrophe. Because it's not true. Truly, empty space, sucks dry of any air or particles, still has an inherent energy to it, according to observations, Vivo said. But when scientists use theories of quantum mechanics to try and calculate this vacuum energy, their results differ from the measured results by a factor of 120. Zeros after it. This is where that number comes from, folks. This is why what we've been taught in schools is currently out by a factor of 120 zeros after it, making it the biggest mismatch in scientific history. Alarming the error. To make a math error that big, you know you really have to work hard at it. It's not easy, said Freeman, who is a senior staff scientist at the Fermi National Accelerator Laboratory and current director at the Dark Energy Survey. So, these experiments they're doing, like at CERN and stuff, right, are actually to do with just combating the frequency of the Earth itself, essentially. They want to lower the frequency of the Earth through the guise of science to allow demonic entities into our reality. This is it. You know, this is why if you looked into the opening ceremony of CERN, you'll see that they were doing sacrifices, right, with their intention, is because that's how it works, right? They want to use their free will to manipulate our reality while they lie to you about everything, you know. And this whole thing, right, of people believing the nonsense of the globe Earth has everything to do with why they're getting away with it. Because they don't want you to know about creation. They don't want you to know the truth. So I've showed you this before, but we'll get into it. Earth may be at the center of the universe. Sloan Digital Survey and Planck satellite data confirm that the Copernican model of the universe may be faulty. You don't say. It's out by a power of 1 in 120 zeros after it, right? So recent space probe data readings for the so-called cosmic microwave background and sky surveys by the Sloan Earth-based digital telescope mapping, the visible stars from the Earth has revealed that our own Milky Way is at the axis or center of the known universe as we know it. Right? These satellites prove that it's not forever expanding, that there is, how can we put it, creation involved, right? As we get into it. The discovery and affirmation of galaxy mapping over almost 20 years may revise modern science view of the Earth is not just a random planetary system. It's not a planet. We live on a plane, right, with a dome around us. And essentially, if you want to take the ancient literary sources and understanding of ancient cultures of what they drew and they depicted and what they speak about, including what's in the Bible and the Quran, etc., the holy books, they tell you that the waters above were separated from the waters below. And now you gotta ask yourself, well, why is the sky blue, right? See, that there are other answers, right? So it's not like you need to literally get rid of that notion of space being a vacuum, for one, and then you need to not put a flat disk, for two, because the Earth has levels, because water finds its level, right, as we know, which proves that the Earth is not a globe. NASA Planck probe was able to fully map an image of the known universe. Oh, and these satellites, right, were below the Van Allen radiation belt as well, so they never went to deep space because it doesn't exist, and they were about 100 kilometers up in low Earth orbit, mapping space, right, using frequencies to map the universe. So essentially, they were trying to find the Big Bang to prove it right, and they proved it wrong. But they're never gonna teach this in the schools, because it literally destroys every single thing that they've built over three centuries. The Freemasons, the Jesuits, right? So NASA Planck probe was able to fully map an image of the known universe. The arrow at the bottom left of the digitally enhanced galaxy map above points out that the Earth is at the center of everything, and that all galaxies, they're not what you think, seem to be meticulously aligned geometric web around the Earth and the Milky Way as the center of the known universe. Scientists have found the same CMB line of the visible cosmos from the sky, space probe, and ground digital telescope data gathering projects have created a very interesting map of the known universe. Galaxies are aligned in concentric spheres around the Earth and the Milky Way, and that of the cosmic microwave background converges on the Earth along its equator and on its axis, making the Earth the center of the known universe. Right, I've done a video separate to this, right? But essentially, there are 7 known concentric circles, each 250. That's a lie. Light doesn't travel. Light does not travel forever. Right? Think about a car headlight. Can you see forever down a straight line? If you were traveling at night, no. If you have a torch, does it shine forever? No. Does our eyes prove, right, that they're local to our field of view? Yes. Meaning they're not millions of light years away. They are visible to our field of view. Again, something that you need to take into your calculations in your mind. But essentially, they named this the axis of evil, right? Why? Why did they do that? Why did they name this sacred alignment of the earth and space, right? The axis of evil. Because they don't like the truth. So this unbelievably gives credence to the ancient dictum that the stars in the heavens revolve around the earth. Is it a coincidence that most Copernican cosmic model believers insist it's an impossible event or some aberration of observed data? No. According to the Muslim holy teachings, the measurement of time created matter and space were already in existence prior to this entire universe existing. How much has the Quran and the holy books been changed and edited through time? We know the Bible has been changed. We know the Muslim teachings have been changed. We know that for example, the Bible, Genesis, comes from the Sumerian literature, the epic of creation, the 7 tablets of creation, the Enuma Elish, when on high, as it states at the start. So essentially, it is a clockwork mechanism that involves magnets, sound, frequencies, water. Lights are in the heavens, but they're not what you've been told. So the planets aren't exactly what you've been told. And these 4 experiments here were seen as failures because they proved that the Earth is stationary. You don't feel the effects of the Earth moving because it doesn't move, right? Gravity is not magic. It is buoyancy and density, which is part of the magnetic electric universe, let's call it. Next. I'll put these in the link. So why does NASA need aircraft model flying over a flat and non-rotating Earth? Right? Now people go, oh, they had to test all different variant models, but the answer is quite simple, because I've just proved the Earth is stationary at the center of the universe. In fact, they proved it, which they're never going to tell you. Duration and definition of linear aircraft, right? Just look at the summary. These are all mathematical equations based on. This report documents it's not going to bring it. Derivation and definition of linear aircraft model for a rigid aircraft of constant mass flying over a flat, non-rotating Earth, right? So they use flat Earth and mathematics while they continually lie to us, So the moon. Did we go to the moon? No. Was it filmed by Stanley Kubrick in a Hollywood basement? Yes. Buzz Aldrin even admits it, right? I'm not going to play the video. I'll put the links in the description. So, here we go. Van Allen radiation belt spot an impenetrable barrier in space. Charged particles, part of Earth's magnetic field. So when they say magnets, right, you think the Earth's core, right? But the Earth's hollow. Proven by seismic testing and undoubtedly this is how they're deceiving you in terms of like volcanoes and tectonic plates, because none of that's all still based on lies. So the seismologists put their equipment in the ground. They test for sound in the ground, right? Yeah. But there's a hell of a lot of activity underground. That data is just being misinterpreted. And not just that, but because of centuries of lies, they can now literally bomb any location they want and go, it's just a volcano. Just like I try to prove in my other videos with the Philippines, when you actually can see a dark craft, right, in low Earth orbit. So they can get away with mass genocide under the guise of nature today, and many of you won't even bat an eyelid. Many of you just go, it's just a tectonic plate moving or whatever, even though the Earth's stationary, doesn't move. And my map will prove that, there is no tectonic plates, that at one point there was one landmass with only seas, lakes and rivers in the end. But I've got to get there. And to prove the sun and moon cycles is very difficult on a flat map. It's very difficult. Secondly, I don't know if there's two suns. My hunch is there is. That the in the programming they talk, like recently I've been watching Eureka, for example. They talked about two suns, right? Now NASA says themselves that there's the most common system is a binary system, and yet Brian Cox, for example, says there's another sun that NASA's hiding, right? What is it? Is there two suns now? Can that explain a little better why there's the sun times in the northern and southern hemispheres? That there's a sun in the north and a sun in the south? Now I need people to do their own observations and actually send them to me, but I'm going to do a separate video asking for this. I've made a makeshift sextant, and I just want people to try and do that themselves and to write down their observations and send it to me, because I can't use the globe Earth model data to prove them wrong anymore. It's not quite right. It kind of proves that NASA's lied in the end. So space radiation, the Apollo crews were just extremely lucky, right? Oh my word. They never went to the moon, and if you think they did, you're delusional. And here's more proof. So they were just extremely lucky, right? Just to get to the moon and back. And they managed to get past the Van Allen radiation belts, right? With 60s equipment, but today they go, we've lost that technology to go to the moon. Something's fishy. They're liars. They've got the serpent's tongue in their bloody logo, for goodness sake. So how old's the moon? According to them, it's 4.5 billion years old. Let's use that. Let's use that number. Temperatures of the moon, right? 260 degrees Fahrenheit down to 250 minus, yeah? That's a very massive extreme variant of hot and cold temperatures. So what happens on Earth when we have extreme variants of hot and cold? Well, repeated heating and cooling of cycles eventually cause rocks to fracture. So if the moon was that old, right, and it's gone through this extreme variance of temperature for 4.5 billion years, right, how come it's still a perfect circle? How come we don't see large chunks of it floating around? Because it should have by now, right? Because hot and cold, if it's a rock, right, even though it's not, it's a holographic projection, cause fissures, cause fractures, right? So how come we don't see the moon in massive pieces by now through the temperature variance? Good question, right? Because it's not a bloody rock. It's a bit of cheese, right? So there you go. How climate affects weathering on the, you see, like fracture, hot and cold variance will cause it to fracture. We don't see this with the moon. The moon is still a perfectly spherical object, right? In low Earth orbit. That's not millions of miles away. Proving again that they lied. I mean, undoubtedly. And if you don't think that's a logical argument, again, you're not thinking correctly, right? Light in sun simulation offers more proof of moon landing. No, this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Anyway, right. Let me get down. So basically, there's two shadows, right, on the on one of the moon footages clips, and essentially it goes, oh, it turns out the conspiracy theorists were correct that an artificial light source illuminated the famous photograph of Aldrin, right? Only it wasn't a studio light, but the man taking the photograph, Armstrong. We found a clip of the videotape that was shot from the other side of the ladder, Daly said. There is a huge glowing bright white light. And as we analysed that video a little more, we realised it's Neil Armstrong himself. Oh my God, it's so bright, the sun, right, on the moon, that it reflected off Neil Armstrong's spacesuit and created a shadow behind, but on Buzz Aldrin. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh my word. You know what I'm saying? The bright white space boot that he was wearing reflected all that sunlight off him back onto Buzz Aldrin. So essentially, Neil Armstrong himself was the light source in the scene. Are you fucking kidding me? Oh dear, that's just laughable. Anyway, let's get to light and properties and actually, you know, professional photographers. What do they say? So, the basics of shadows. Each light source creates one shadow per object. Oh, busted! There was two light sources, meaning that they never went to the moon. More fucking evidence that should make you go, okay, what is the moon then? So, here's a question. Here's a few things it could be. Now here we go. This whole flat disc thing, right? This is a representation of the flat Earth, yeah. But it's not floating around in space, for goodness sake. Because space is not forever expanding and it's water, right? Which means something completely different to what you've been told. It means the Earth is stationary, that at one point in time this whole place was engineered and created, in my opinion, under the sea of another world. So, path about 3,000 miles above the flat Earth. So I used the globe Earth model to show that the sun does actually oscillate between the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn. I don't think that is truth because I've been getting sent message after message after message saying I see on the zenith and on the 44th parallel, say in France, the sun above my head. Now, I need people's observations. I need people to actually use a sextant and actually mark down their longitude and latitude and make their own observations, because we can't trust NASA's data anymore, you know? If that's the case, you know? Is there places on the Earth that cast two shadows? And if that's the case, is there two light sources? Because that's what it says. Each light source creates its own shadow per object. Does light travel forever? No, it doesn't. So these are just explanations of the sun and moon cycle. The moon is not a solid spherical body, but a flat disk. It is largely transparent and completely self-luminescent, shining with its own unique light. That is what it says in the ancient text. It's got its own light source. In fact, a friend of mine, who's an amateur astronomer, told me the that there is 2 light sources on the moon today. He says he sees it with his own eyes, and I believe him, because NASA have been to the moon. What a contradiction, right? They've added another light source. Now, I haven't got the picture on me, but I drew a picture of what I saw the last full moon, and that was a beam of light coming from the top of it, right? I was squinting at the moon, and I can tell you now that this beam of light looked like it was being projected down from the heavens. It's a hologram. It's a projection, right? This is why we can see the stars through it, which has been proven through many people's observations, not just one. Secondly, there's a phenomenon called the lunar wave, which absolutely show that it's definitely not a physical object, right? But rather a hologram, a projection. Has its own light source, it has its own programming. Yeah, programming is involved in the sun and moon movements, and this involves ancient spaceports, for example, and ancient history. So in the past, there was a war over the control over a space station, right? What do you think that was about? That was about controlling the sun and the moon. Today, NASA, and with the help of China, I'll show you in a minute. So the moon is a hologram. These are just explanations of what people have said, and the guys just put it together, right? Again, I'll put everything I have shown you here in the link. But my personal opinion is it's a hologram being projected down from the heavens. At the same time, there's a secondary light source which NASA have been up there and added themselves to, because I'm pretty sure the moon was not as bright as it was before 1976. So they've been up there, all right? Wires on astronauts show how NASA fakes anti-gravity in ISS. That's really on Earth. Again, if you know where to look, you will find the answers. And the answers are that Hollywood, the Catholic Church, secret societies, and the education system, along with the bankers and the politicians, are all in bed with each other to deceive you, about how you exist, right? Because they don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know that you have a soul. They don't want you to know that the earth is created and you have a special place within it. That the space is created as well and has sacred alignments with the earth, which they aptly named the axis of evil, for goodness sake. So the only people that are tinfoil hat wearing today are those who refuse to look at all the evidence which points to a different interpretation. They're the crazy ones because they refuse to look at the evidence. They just laugh in our faces when we tell them otherwise, that there is secret societies that exist that have brainwashed the public using electromagnetic, let's call it interference from the television, yeah? Manipulation, let's call it. There's patents for these things. You can look it up. The television is manipulating your subconscious through the power of suggestion and through images that go quicker than what your eye can see. 120 frames per second the television goes now. China to launch world's first man-made moon by 2020, subliminal messages. So this new moon is meant to replace street lamps for illumination satellites, right? Any of you seen Dark Fallen Skies? You know, the alien invasion with a space grid above our heads with a moon and sun created by the governments. Come on. It's all in the programming. But essentially, they plan to create a new moon. Well, how? If the moon is a rock, right? How the fuck do you think they're going to emulate it? They're just going to send up some rocks into low Earth orbit? Yeah, there's the moon. No, it's going to be a hologram or a projection. Or both. So, moon projector apparatus. This is just one patent that shows, that just goes into how they're going to do it. Utilizing a transparency of the entire visible area of the moon. Essentially, they're going to use holograms, right? This goes into Project Bluebeam. And if you've never heard of that, I suggest you look it up. Because that is what's coming. They want to trick every single body using centuries of lies and technologies coming in the future to convince you that you've got a common enemy when you already bloody have a common enemy. It's called the governments. It's called the principalities of these places, that control our perception of reality. So holographic patents, and this is just a small number of patents going into holographic displays of moon, and sensors, and how they're going to do it using liquid crystal as a light deflector, plasma, essentially. So there are lots and lots of patents to do with holograms, to do with the moon, to do with potentially how China is going to make the world's first man-made moon. Created. Everything's created, right? There's no accident. It can never be. So there's patents. And these last two things are about sound and water. And essentially, with certain frequencies, can make water do crazy things. So they put this 24 hertz sin wave through water, and it makes a zigzag pattern. Which is pretty impressive. Magic zigzag watering. So water is very important to our existence, and so is sound. So what else can sound do? Sound waves make droplets dance in midair. So sound can levitate objects. Sound can levitate water as well. So I'm not saying I have all the answers. What I am saying is that you've been deceived. I am 100% saying that there are other answers out there which we all need to come together to create a brand new theory of everything, of which relates to ancient literature, what's in the Bible, the Muslim teachings, right, etc. Because creationism is the only answer. There is no such thing as a coincidence or an accident. And you have to get in your head that everything relates to technologies in this reality. The sun is a bit of technology. The moon is a bit of technology. The earth was created using technologies. That there is magnets probably underneath our feet that are actually rotating the dome, which has fixed stars, which is what it says in the texts. Secondly, that toroidal fields can rotate objects around a stationary earth. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, please share, like, subscribe, comment.